You're watching Our Time on Freedom. I'm Mikhail Baranov in the studio. Hello? Next, we'll talk about the important news of the day. Around 2 p.m., the Russian Federation Army struck the center of Kharkiv, reportedly with 2 missiles. The occupiers targeted a residential area, and one of the apartment buildings was significantly damaged. According to local authorities, preliminary reports say 13 people were injured. All emergency services are working at the site of the strike. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy has already been informed about the attack, and he has responded to yet another wave of Russian terror.
Unfortunately, that's exactly how it is. The Russians show no regard for human life and continue the killings. And this is happening despite the efforts of the entire world, and especially the United States, in the diplomatic process. Only Russia does not want this war to end, and every day it does everything possible to keep the war going. That is exactly why support for Ukraine must continue. Every day we need to strengthen our air defense. Our positions are protection of people's lives. Thank you to everyone who stands with Ukraine. Volodymyr Zelenskyy, President of Ukraine, on Telegram.
In the Chernihiv region, Russian occupiers attacked a hospital in the city of Semenyevka with 3 drones. This was reported by local authorities. 3 service vehicles, garages, and utility buildings were destroyed, and the kitchen block was damaged. A fire broke out at the strike. Also, according to the regional military administration, windows in residential buildings were damaged by the Russian strike of a 5-story building. 2 people were injured as a result of the Russian army's attack on the Dnipropetrovsk region. There is destruction of civilian infrastructure. This was reported by local authorities. Zaporizhzhia endured a drone attack on the night of January 2nd. The regional military administration called this strike on the city one of the most massive since the start of the full-scale war. Residential buildings and infrastructure facilities were damaged. Fortunately, none of the residents were killed. But 3 people were injured. 2 of them are children. More about the aftermath of the attack in our report.
The Russian attack began around midnight. One of the drones crashed into a shopping and office center on the first floor of a high-rise building. A fire broke out. The blast wave shattered windows in neighboring buildings. It also damaged parked cars in the courtyard. Residents of the building say they managed to run into the hallway before the explosion.
The child was very frightened. Yes, everyone was really scared. It was unpleasant.
According to Svetlana, neither the neighbors nor her family were injured, but the apartment was badly damaged.
Well, when there are no windows, nothing left, it's freezing outside, it suffered a lot.
Right after the attack, utility workers and volunteers arrived to help the residents of the affected buildings. They put up wooden boards in place of the broken windows and sealed the gaps with insulation.
Only the windows were blown out, thank God. That's my window, the 3rd one, 4th floor, 3rd window. The curtains were closed and that saved us. There's a wardrobe with a mirrored glass nearby. If not for that, it would have been done for.
A significant number of Russian drones were destroyed by air defense systems, even as they were approaching the city. But several UAVs exploded in courtyards and right in the middle of the streets. One fell at the intersection just 10 meters from a 5-story building that had just been restored after a Russian attack in 2022. Back then, it was destroyed by a Russian missile. This time, the blast wave blew out the windows in the building. A Russian drone also damaged the power lines.
It damaged the traffic light. We're replacing the traffic lights and cables. The traffic light equipment was damaged.
During the day, the enemy continued to attack Zaporizhzhia and its suburbs. In one of the city's bustling districts, a Russian military drone completely destroyed a private residential house, causing significant damage.
On the night of January 2nd, Russia launched 116 drones over Ukrainian territory. Among them were Shaheds, Garans, and other types of drones. According to the Ukrainian Air Force, the defenders of Ukraine's skies shot down and suppressed 86 Russian UAVs using electronic warfare systems. Strikes by attack drones were recorded at 23 locations. In addition, Ukrainian defense forces eliminated another 910 Russian occupiers over the past day. Thus, according to the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, the total losses of the Russian army in the war against Ukraine since the start of the full-scale invasion have reached 1 million and nearly 210,000 soldiers. In addition, yesterday 6 tanks, 2 armored vehicles, 42 artillery pieces, and 2 multiple launch rocket systems were destroyed. 98 combat engagements were recorded along the entire front line over the past day. According to the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, Russian occupiers were most active in assaulting Ukrainian positions in the Pokrovsk direction. There, Ukrainian soldiers repelled 23 enemy attacks. 15 assaults were repelled in the Kostiantinovka sector of the front, the same number in the Lyman sector, 14 in the Guliapola sector, and 12 in the Alexandriivka sector. Military experts note that Ukraine's defense forces have almost complete control over the city of Kupiansk and have achieved tactical successes in this direction.
This includes Moskva and a number of other settlements from which the Russians were driven out. At this moment in Kupiansk, assault groups of the occupiers have been blocked by Special Forces units. Strike and search operations are being carried out by the main intelligence directorate of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine and the Special Operations Forces to eliminate them. The occupiers themselves admit that Kupiansk has almost completely come under the control of Ukraine's defense forces.
The main intelligence directorate of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine has revealed details of a special operation against the commander of the Russian Volunteer Corps, Denis Kapustin. The GUR reported that military intelligence officers carried out a complex, multi-stage special operation to expose enemy agents. To support the story of the RVC commander's death, a video recording was created, where a drone destroys a bus in which he was supposedly located. The GUR notes that the masterminds of the crime within the Russian special services believed the video and, so to speak, paid for the hit, transferring $500,000. Ukrainian intelligence officers note that these funds will be used to strengthen the capabilities of the GUR. The president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelenskyy, has appointed the head of the main intelligence directorate, Kirilo Budanov, as the head of the UKR, of the Office of the President of Ukraine. The president noted that the country now needs to focus more on security issues, the development of the defense forces, as well as the diplomatic track in negotiations. And since Kirilo Budanov has special experience in solving such tasks, the office of the president under his leadership will achieve results. The Ukrainian leader is confident. Budanov, in turn, thanked for the trust placed in him. Lies and fake news as a means of manipulating the population. The Russian dictator Putin lies about the successes of his army, both to internal and external audiences. In this way, he tries to calm social tensions within Russia, and also seeks to force the West and Ukraine to agree to the Kremlin's demands. After all, in 4 years of full-scale invasion, Moscow has not managed to achieve even the intermediate goals of its so-called special military operation. More details in the report by Yulia Granoskado.
Lies, speculation, distortion of concepts, propaganda, and blackmail. These are the favorite methods of the Kremlin dictator. He has been using them for decades, but in 2025, Putin managed to stand out on all fronts: economic, political, military, and diplomatic. Putin lied everywhere and to everyone. For example, the Russian General Staff and the Kremlin leader himself repeatedly claimed to have taken Kupiansk in the Kharkiv region. After yet another such statement in December, the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelenskyy, arrived in the city together with the chief of the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, Alexander Syrsky. The head of state spoke with the soldiers and recorded a video.
The Russians talked a lot about Kupiansk. We see it. He was here. He congratulated the guys. I thank every unit, everyone who's fighting here, everyone who's destroying the occupiers. Today, it is extremely important to achieve results on the front lines so that Ukraine can achieve results in diplomacy. That's exactly how it works. All our strong positions within the country are strong positions in the conversation about ending the war.
Russian propaganda didn't recover from such a slap in the face for a long time. What everyone especially remembered was the lie. Putin's claim that Russian troops had supposedly surrounded 15 battalions of Ukrainian armed forces near Kupiansk. And on December 19th, Putin stated that the Russian army, and I quote, is advancing along the entire line of contact. In all directions, the enemy is retreating. In reality, according to the American Institute for the Study of War, since the beginning of the year, Russia has managed to capture less than 1% of Ukrainian territory, despite daily assaults and enormous losses. When
we talk about the current Russian-Ukrainian war, we very often mention its hybrid component, which is the informational aspect. And it's extremely important because it's an attempt by the Russian command to influence not only Russian society, and the leadership, accordingly, these are attempts to influence Ukrainian society, and in turn, these are signals to our Western partners.
Another city, the capture of which is reported to Putin with enviable regularity, is Pokrovsk. On October 26, the head of the Russian General Staff announced that the city was completely under Russian control. Putin even invited foreign journalists there. Of course, no one went because everyone knows the value of the Russian dictator's words. And on November 30th, Gerasimov once again reported to Putin about the capture of Pokrovsk-Volchansk. The command of the Ukrainian Defense Forces refuted all these fakes. And in the dictator's alternate universe, the Russian army broke into the unknown city of Komsomolsk in the Donetsk region in 2025.
Further on. Komsomolsk. And north of Komsomolsk? Kupiansk, Sudyansk. A little further north, northeast of Seversk. Fighting is taking place inside the city of Komsomolsk.
The thing is, there is and never was a city with that name on this section of the front. A similarly named settlement, Komsomolskaya, is located in the south of Donetsk region, not far from Mariupol. And since 2014, it has been occupied by Russia. It's worth noting that there really was a city called Komsomolsk in Ukraine. Only it was in the Poltava region, and in 2016 it was renamed to Horishny Plavny. With such statements, Putin is trying to destabilize the situation in Ukraine and deprive Kyiv of Western support, according to experts.
Here, in my opinion, there's another factor at play, why these kinds of rumors about territories are being spread. These are attempts by the Russians to stake out certain maps, their own territorial claims, which they will then calmly, as they see it, they will use them as bargaining chips during possible negotiations.
Moscow is deliberately spreading the false narrative that the front line in Ukraine is supposedly bound to collapse, analysts at the Institute for the Study of War emphasize. In this way, Putin is trying to force the West and Ukraine to agree to the Kremlin's demands, which Moscow cannot achieve by military means. And there are several reasons for that. First, the colossal losses suffered by the Russian army at the front. According to the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, since February 2022, Russia has lost well over 1 million people killed and wounded. And secondly, the economy of the aggressor countries simply can't withstand the scale of expenses for the war against Ukraine. And the sanctions are doing their part too.
Subscribe to The Gaze and stay updated on the most important events, top news from Ukrainian all over the world, in-depth analysis, exclusive reports and interviews, all on hand in our channel. Join our community of viewers and stay tuned.